Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. New campaign finance data shows House and Senate candidates are on pace to spend a record $2 billion by next Tuesday's midterm election. A new report from the Public Campaign Action Fund estimates House candidates could end up spending $1.5 billion, with most of the money being spent on the 90 races seen as still in play. Senate candidates are on pace to spend $550 million. In addition, outside groups are expected to end up spending over $400 million, much of it raised from secret donors. This election cycle has also seen a handful of millionaire candidates spend record amounts of their own money on campaigns. In California, former eBay CEO Meg Whitman, the Republicans' gubernatorial candidate, has spent $141 million of her own fortune on the race. In Florida, former health care executive Rick Scott has spent just over $60 million in personal and family money in his gubernatorial bid. And in Connecticut, Republican Linda McMahon has spent $41 million of her own money in her bid to succeed retiring Democratic Senator Chris Dodd. Politico reports McMahon has spent about $37 per voter, compared with $16 for Whitman and $12 for Scott. In related news, the watchdog group Transparency International says the United States is no longer in its top 20 list of least corrupt nations. The U.S. fell from 19th to 22nd in the organization's Corruption Perception Index, in part due to political funding disputes, the subprime mortgage crisis, and the disclosure of Bernard Madoff's Ponzi scheme. This marks the first time the United States has dropped out of the top 20. Denmark, New Zealand, and Singapore were rated as the world's least corrupt nations. Somalia, Burma, Afghanistan, and Iraq are listed as the most corrupt. Newly released government income data shows that average wages and total wages declined for all income brackets last year, except at the very top, where they leaped dramatically. The financial writer David K. Johnston has revealed the average income for Americans in the highest income bracket, those earning more than $50 million a year, increased five-fold to an average income of just over $500 million. Johnston writes, quote, "These 74 people made as much as the 19 million lowest-paid people in America, who constitute 1 in every 8 workers." The latest government statistics also show that millions of unemployed workers did not earn any money last year. 1 out of every 34 Americans who earned wages in 2008 went all of 2009 without earning a single dollar. In news from Guantanamo, a Canadian citizen who's been detained by the U.S. since he was 15 years old has pled guilty to 5 war crimes charges. As part of a plea deal, Omar Khadr will serve a reduced sentence, much of it in Canada. Khadr was detained 8 years ago in Afghanistan. Human rights groups have condemned the Bush and Obama administration's handling of the Khadr case. Khadr's trial was set to be the first under the Obama administration's revised military commission system. It also would have been the first war crimes tribunal anywhere since World War II to prosecute someone for acts allegedly committed as a juvenile. Khadr's defense attorneys, Dennis Edney, said a plea deal was the only way to get Khadr out of Guantanamo.
We've looked at the circumstances, and it's our clear opinion that Mr. Khadr is an innocent man. And Mr. Khadr was put into a hellish conflict where he continues to remain in this hellhole that has a record internationally of abuse, whether he is prepared to subject himself to a process that's not legal or go home.
The military tribunal's chief prosecutor, Navy Captain John Murphy, dismissed claims by human rights groups that Khadr should be seen as a victim.
And Omar Khadr, over and over again, repeated, yes, that is correct. I did that. I am a murderer. I'm an al-Qaeda terrorist. What you saw puts a lie to the long-standing argument by some that Omar Khadr is a victim. He's not. He's a murderer, and he is convicted by the strength of his own words.
An Iraqi court has sentenced former Foreign Minister Tariq Aziz to death for his role in war crimes committed when he was a top aide to Saddam Hussein. The charges against Aziz are related to a crackdown on an uprising led by Shia Muslim parties in the early 90s. For years, Tariq Aziz was the public face of the Iraqi government under Saddam Hussein. The Wall Street Journal reports the U.S. is pushing to expand a secret CIA effort to target militants inside Pakistan. In recent weeks, the Obama administration's asked Pakistan to allow additional CIA officers, including CIA paramilitary forces, to enter the country. The U.S. has never publicly said how many CIA personnel are already in Pakistan, but the Journal reports the number has grown substantially in recent years. The CIA has also recently intensified drone strikes in Pakistan. Afghan President Hamid Karzai has confirmed both the Iranian and U.S. governments have given his office bags of money that he could spend with no oversight. These secret payments became an issue Sunday when the New York Times published an article exposing how Iran's ambassador to Afghanistan pays off members of Karzai's government. On Monday, Karzai addressed the Iranian payments. He said, quote, "This is something I have also discussed in Camp David with President Bush. This is nothing hidden. The U.S. is doing the same thing, supplying cash to some of our offices." In Washington, State Department spokesperson P.J. Crowley accused Iran of helping to destabilize the region.
We'll let the government of Afghanistan, speak to how they spend the financial assistance received from other countries. But we remain skeptical of Iran's motives, given its history of playing a destabilizing role with its neighbors. We hope that Iran will take responsibility to play a constructive role in the future of Afghanistan.
The Guardian newspaper reports the British military has been training interrogators in techniques that include threats, sensory deprivation, and enforced nakedness in an apparent breach of the Geneva Conventions. The newspaper obtained secret British training materials that tell interrogators they should aim to provoke humiliation, insecurity, disorientation, exhaustion, anxiety, and fear in the prisoners they're questioning. The 1949 Geneva Conventions prohibit any physical or moral coercion, in particular any coercion employed to obtain information. In election news, Democratic Congress member Keith Ellison of Minnesota is facing political attacks over his Islamic faith. Over the weekend, the Tea Party Nation sent out an email listing reasons why Ellison should be voted out of office. One of the reasons listed read, quote, "He is the only Muslim member of Congress." The Tea Party also alleges Ellison, quote, "helped Congress send millions of taxes to terrorists in Gaza." No proof of the claim is offered. In 2006, Ellison became the first Muslim to be elected to Congress, but he's no longer the only Muslim in Congress. Congressmember Andre Carson of Indiana was elected in 2008, becoming the second Muslim in Congress. In Louisiana, questions have arisen over reports that large amounts of oil from the BP spill were spotted last week floating toward marshes on the Mississippi River Delta. On Friday, the Times-Picayune newspaper first published photos of what was believed to be oil. But since then, the Coast Guard and some scientists have said the substance may be algae, not oil. Local fishermen and women have dismissed the Coast Guard's claims. Cindy Cruikshank told the Times-Picayune, quote, "It was brown, it was sticky, it smelled like the oil you drain from your car, and it took my husband Bill and friends a long time to scrub it off our boat." Meanwhile, BP's new CEO, Bob Dudley, has accused the news media and some of BP's competitors of exaggerating the severity of the BP oil spill, the largest in U.S. history. Dudley said Monday, quote, "There was a great rush to judgment by a fair number of observers before the full facts could possibly be known." Minnesota Public Radio has obtained the FBI record of the late Senator Paul Wellstone, who died in a plane crash 8 years ago this week. The records show the FBI first tracked Wellstone in 1970 after he was arrested in an anti-Vietnam War protest. The records might also raise new questions about the plane crash that killed him, his daughter, his wife, and 3 staffers. The National Transportation Safety Board determined the crash was caused by pilot error, but the FBI documents reveal for the first time that specific criminal leads were pursued by investigators. Part of the FBI probe focused on problems with the plane's de-icing equipment. A caller from Florida said members of the American Trucking Association had planned to disconnect the plane's de-icing equipment because they were upset with Wellstone's efforts to expose organized crime in the trucking industry. The FBI files also reveal that Wellstone's St. Paul office received a threatening postcard the day before the plane crash. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.